Hey everybody, welcome to lesson 3 of our Happy Easter series. Hopefully everybody's surviving okay. Hopefully you're able to stay connected with the things we're trying to get going with the youth group through Instagram, the Bible app, the Remind app. If you're not connected to any of those things, please let me know. We'll make sure you know what's going on. And so I wanted to dig into this third lesson by talking about something that is one of the most divisive aspects of Easter. It causes friends to turn against one another, family members to want to disown each other, and that is the topic of marshmallow peeps. Yes, you heard me right, marshmallow peeps. I love marshmallow peeps, those little pure sugar fluff nuggets that are so good. And nobody else in my family really likes them. And so we get into arguments, and sometimes I feel like I'm all alone in the world, that just being a person that loves marshmallow peeps. And maybe that's you. Obviously, I'm being dramatic here. I don't really feel like I'm all alone because of marshmallow peeps. But that does introduce us to the topic we're going to be talking about today, and that is this aspect of feeling alone. When I was growing up, I moved several times. My dad is a pastor, and so I moved starting my fifth grade year, and then I moved at the beginning of high school. And when I moved going to high school, I got to school a week late, so that's already weird. And it was a school of around 4,000 people, and I didn't know one person at that school as a freshman. And it was really hard. It's accurate to say that I felt really alone. I was having to make decisions on my own, figure out new friends on my own, who I wanted to be on my own. It was a really tough time. The same thing happened to me when I went to college. I knew no one at the college I went to. And maybe for you, you've felt times where you've been alone. As a matter of fact, I'm sure you have. And there are lots of reasons for that. Maybe your family moved, your friend group changed, or you lost a friend. Could be a breakup, certain decisions that no one else seems to understand, a question, feeling, or doubt that you had, and you felt like nobody understood you. All of these things can make us feel like we're alone, like we've got to figure all this out by ourselves. And it's hard. It's hard. I think we all know what it feels like to be on your own. And when you feel like we're on our own, when we feel that way, we start to believe things that seem true in the moment, but generally aren't. It's those times when you just get low and you think everyone's against you or out to get you or doesn't care about you. We've been there. I'm sure you've been there. And you feel like no one's there to help you when you need it. No one's there to comfort you when you're really broken up about something. No one's there to defend you when you feel like you're being wronged or unjustly treated. And so we get to these places where we start to believe that we really are alone and that nobody cares. And when we feel alone, we tend to feel overwhelmed. Like things are just becoming too much to even handle. And we're built that way. We're built to not be alone. And that's why when we feel like we've got no one for us or with us, it messes with us. It tears us up. It makes us feel like we just can't get through stuff. It's because we're wired for community. We're wired for people to help us, encourage us, lift us up, take up for us. And that's really, really true. And so we're going to dig into an aspect of Easter that deals with the followers of Jesus feeling very overwhelmed and very alone, very lonely. And if you know anything about the story of Easter, Jesus, his closest followers, they'd been with him for years. Most of them, for 3 solid years, they ate, slept, drank, did everything together. They did life together. And so Jesus was trying to prepare them and say, I'm going to die and I'm going to be raised again. And they just couldn't understand that. They were confused. And so these closest friends of Jesus watched him die. This man that was going to overthrow the government in their eyes, that was going to be a new ruler for God's people and establish a new kingdom, they believed him. They believed he was going to do these things. And so when they watched him die, they thought, now what? A lot of those followers ran. They hid. They didn't know what to do. They were very overwhelmed. Well, then Jesus came back to life, and it was awesome, and they were encouraged. And he, was fully alive and walked the earth for 40 days, but then he left again. And so what are his followers to do? And that's what we're going to get into today. And so as we begin to talk more about Jesus' life, we're going to look at Luke. Luke recorded Jesus' life. He recorded what he did, his miracles, and he also recorded what happened when Jesus went back to heaven, when he ascended 40 days after he had resurrected. And he recorded the acts of the apostles, their acts after Jesus had come back to life. And that's why you have the book of Acts. So Luke wrote Luke and Acts. And so our main passage today is going to be in Acts. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about John and a passage from John as it leads up to our main passage today. In John, it's recorded the words of Jesus before he's crucified. He's trying to explain to his disciples what's going to happen so they will realize they're not really alone. And he says, "But in fact, it is best for you that I go away." Now this would make no sense to the disciples. What do you mean it's better for us if you leave? Like, you're our leader. He says, "Because if I don't, the advocate won't come. If I do go away, then I will send him to you." So Jesus is saying it's better if I go away, because then you'll receive the Holy Spirit. That's another name for advocate. And this term advocate, it tells us that what will come after Jesus will be a helper. It will be a comforter. It will be a defender for those who have believed in Jesus. That's what the Holy Spirit will do. And so Jesus is saying, don't worry. I'm not going to just leave you. You're going to have a helper. It's an amazing thing. Sorry, I went ahead there before we get to Acts. But yeah, so Jesus is trying to set this up. He's telling them, I'm going to send the Holy Spirit. That's why I'm going to have to leave. You're not going to be alone. And then in Acts, we read, "But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses, telling people about me everywhere, in Jerusalem, throughout Judea, in Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." What's amazing is the church grew and the message about Jesus spread far greater after he left. And again, this shouldn't make sense. But because the Holy Spirit is now able to dwell inside of all who believe in Jesus and not just in Jesus himself, God expanded his kingdom. The work of Jesus continued, and it was amazing. Think about what this movement of Christianity survived. It survived the powerful Roman Empire. Christianity was not in the place of power. Actually, it was persecuted, but yet it still survived because the Holy Spirit was moving and active in people's lives. It survived intense persecution from governments and other religions. And Christianity survived thousands of years of change. What an amazing thing to think about. The Holy Spirit gave the followers of Jesus power even though they seemed powerless, even though the odds were stacked way against their favor. They knew if they had the Holy Spirit moving inside of them, showing them the mind of Christ, allowing them to come to the Father with prayer and seeking answers, They knew that there was nothing they couldn't do. It's an amazing thing to think about. When Jesus promised an advocate who would give us power and be with us, that was true for everyone who would ever believe in him. That's the good news of Easter today. This is why we say Happy Easter, because the Holy Spirit that moved, that came upon the followers of Jesus after he ascended, he's still moving and active today. If you ask the Holy Spirit to come into your heart, show you the will of God, and show you the mind of Christ and how to think like him and how to see people the way he does, God will do that. The Holy Spirit can be inside of you. It's not just the thing that happened way back then. And so the main thought I want you to understand today is Easter means you're never alone. Easter means you're never alone. Right now, you may be sitting at home feeling very, very alone because you're cut off from people. You're not able to go to school, to church. I get it. That's hard. But God is with you even now. You're not really alone. You're not really alone. You have the Holy Spirit that you can seek, that can bring you help, that can bring you comfort, that's there for you, that's there to defend you. And that changes everything. It changes everything when we realize God's always there. We just need to open our eyes and look and be open to him. And so there are a couple things I want you to think about as we're talking about this idea that Easter means you're never alone. There are things that you can do to grow closer to God and to lean on him and lean on the power of the Holy Spirit in your life. One, you can talk to him anytime, any place, for any reason. Nothing's too trivial for God. If it's a big deal to you, bring it to God. He loves you. He's there for you. He understands you. He knows you. And maybe that's something you can practice this week. If you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling lonely, go to God. Pray to him. Ask him to help you. Ask him to bring you peace, to bring you comfort. Ask him to help you. Ask him to help you know what to do, or maybe even who to reach out to. Nothing's too trivial for God. So I hope this is something you can practice this week. Talk to God anytime, any place, for any reason. Just try that. See how your relationship with God maybe changes if you try that. And another thing, you're stronger than you think. You're stronger than you think. As we talked about Jesus' followers, after he'd gone back to be with God the Father, they faced overwhelming odds. And I'm sure, even though Jesus said the Holy Spirit's going to be with you, they probably were still thinking, how are we going to do this? How are we supposed to make it without our leader? But the Holy Spirit, when they leaned on his moving and his power and his direction, they were able to do things they never thought possible. And so I would say to you, when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling lonely, when you're feeling like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, if you lean on the Holy Spirit's movement and power in your life, and if you realize that God's there for you, he's listening, you can do it. With his help, you can do things you never thought possible. So you're stronger than you think. And we can also be confident that God's power in other believers will be there to support us too. That's the great thing about a church. And, hopefully you'll get to participate in our small groups this Wednesday and stay connected through things we're doing through Instagram and the Remind app and things like that. Why we're trying to keep that going is because the church is there to lift one another up, encourage one another, because none of us are great all the time. Sometimes we need the help of others, and that's okay. That's okay. So Easter means you're never alone.